Ladies and gentlemen, big hairy news.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewie.
Kia ora, Pat. I just noticed.
Yeah.
In the little blurb about what's on the show tonight, you said that we're live at 2 p.m. Is this a way of saying that we're dramatically late?
Did I really say that?
Like Chad has been breaking our balls about being late all week. I didn't expect that I'd be hours late.
Well, I guess if that's the case, I'm just opening it up. I've got to turn the volume down because if I open up the thing, it'll start playing 30 seconds later in my ears. Yeah, I did too. You watch this. The magic of the internet. Backspace 9. Save. Now, if they give us any grief, we'll go, well, where's your evidence? You got any proof of that? Where's the evidence? So I can't see it. Never happened. I didn't see it.
Oh, so smoke.
How's your day? You got yourself along to the doctors' protest? I saw your photo. I was in that same room somewhere, but I couldn't see your orange beanie, and obviously you couldn't see whatever cap I was wearing. But
I couldn't get into the hall.
I just pushed in.
Many people there. I am, as my my little blurb says there, I'm a Wookiee of the people. I wouldn't push my way in. But look, it's a shitty, cold day here in Dunedin. It's snowing inland. Christchurch is getting absolutely pummeled by rain. Wellington might still be there in the morning. The weather has not cooperated with good vibes for a protest or for a rally. But by all indications, turnout around the country pretty solid.
Yeah.
So there's that feeling out there in the community, like we all know there is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Chewie Bird's just saying Wellington is underwater. Christchurch at the moment is under a emergency cordon, whatever you call it, officially state of emergency. So if you're in Christchurch, hope you're well. Send us a distress flare if you need us to come help you. No problems at all. You do those things on Facebook. You go, such and such has marked themselves safe in Christchurch. You can do that in our chat when you mark yourself safe if you're in Christchurch. And I found it interesting that watching the news tonight, it looks like the wind in Wellington was almost looking more dangerous and destructive, but it's Christchurch that's under the state of emergency because of the flooding. More rain through the night as well. So be careful out there. Let's be careful out there, people.
It's the first time that Wellington's had, I believe, a red wind warning, and the Met Service lost one of their measuring devices. Too windy, literally blew away, stopped recording at 150 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
And I did see an excellent point raised by friend of the show, Byron Clark.
Yeah.
It's cold and it's shit. So, you think to go and get takeaways. Maybe think again about getting them delivered and having some low-wage gig worker have to go out in the shitty, borderline dangerous weather just to get your burger.
Yeah. Gary Payinda is about to join us, Doctor. Gary's in the waiting room right now, and I'm going to send him a very subtle message, which is check your phone, Gary. I've just texted you a question. See how subtle that is? No one's going to pick up on that either. No one's going to pick up on that.
Secrets.
So tonight on the show, obviously a big chunk of it's going to be dedicated to the senior doctor strike. That is, we've got Gary coming on. We're also going to look at some of the news items as well. We also, and Chewie, and apparently there's a state of emergency at Chewie's house because he's just completely disappeared. And then we're also going to be having a look at Nicola Willis. Nicola Willis was with Ginny Anderson this morning on breakfast instead of the normal Kieran in the Bush. We don't have much of Ginny. We don't have anything of Ginny, but a couple of comments that Nicola Willis made today, we'll be having a look at. Gosh, I think that says no battery. The Wookiee of the people has no battery. I think we've just run. Chewie, you need to plug yourself in, because apparently you yourself have no battery at the moment. Are you back again?
No, for some reason StreamYard defaults to my phone sometimes, which is fun.
Well, I was going to say one thing. This is really weird, but can you scratch your microphone? Because you sound a bit echoey. I don't know if you're coming through that mic.
It's because it was over here.
Okay, that's why you weren't talking into your microphone. See, we're professionals, Pano. We're professionals. Also, it's almost a compliment for David Seymour tonight. Almost. Oh. Because if you say nothing else about the man, he is consistent, and he is talking about there are ministers have too many staff. Like, so he is saying of himself, I have too many staff. Now, on one hand, you kind of go, okay, let's just fire some more people. But on the other hand, Chewie, you go, well, Prime Minister has 7 social media staff, so maybe Mr. Seymour has a point. You know what I'm saying? So he's made a speech to the Tauranga Business Commerce today about cutting the number of people to help ministers. Of course, there's a lot of exaggeration, and they will point that out for you. But, you know, if nothing else, you hate his politics, whatever, there's some consistency there about making life difficult for everybody. He normally likes to put his knee on the neck of the vulnerable, but maybe some of the ministers are going to have to do a bit of their own work now as well, rather than having their 7 social media team do it for them. Don't know. We'll look at that, though. You guys can make up your own mind for that. Got an announcement coming up as well tonight, all right? And we'll do it at the end of the chat with Dr. Gary. So stick around for that. It'll be something that you are interested to know more about. But let's get into it, shall we, right now? Joining us fresh from the picket line, a Northland emergency doctor, it is Dr. Gary Payinda. Gary, sir, welcome to the show again. It's been such a long time since we had you.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me back. You guys aren't sick of this stuff yet, huh?
Nope. Well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword that. We're not sick of speaking to you. I think everyone's a bit sick of the idea of what this government's doing to things like doctors and nurses and patients. So, you know, however you want to talk about it. Gary, I thought what we could do to start off with, I've got a bunch of stuff here, including some of your own footage, your own photos and stuff. But I think what we might do is we might just start off, because Stuff did a 3-minute piece on this. I think what we can do is actually watch the Stuff article, the 3 News article on the protests today, and then we'll go from there. Everyone down for that? Everyone down for that.
That's good.
So let's have a look at the item of Stuff tonight, which is covering the senior doctors and others strikes around the country today.
To the day's other news, thousands of senior doctors around the country went on strike for 24 hours at midnight over their stalled pay dispute. Health New Zealand says more than 4,000 procedures had to be postponed as a result of today's action. But the Doctors' Union says that figure pales against the number of procedures that have to be delayed every day as a result of chronic staff shortages. Adam Hollingworth reports.
It's the first time senior doctors have been on a 24-hour strike. They walked off the job at midnight. Some clinics are closed, but hospitals and EDs remain open today. The doctors say they've been offered 1.5%. That's below inflation. They're demanding 12% plus an increase to cover the rising costs of medical education. Health New Zealand, Te Whatu Ora, says there's no spare cash.
Oh, look, there's no more money in our coffers. We've as I say.
Sorry, little side note here. I think if you're going to come and tell a group of people there's not enough money, you probably shouldn't wear that jacket. Like, you know what I mean? Doesn't that scream of, Kim.com, what he would wear as leisure wear to an event? It's like, I'm just saying, positioning statement.
My understanding of this gentleman is that he actually owns or has set up Canopy private cancer centers, which is a huge chain of oncology centers. Now, I could be wrong if anyone knows the correct, most current story, but that is my understanding, is that is part of his claim to fame. Where essentially in the public system, you might get a free infusion of your chemotherapy. In private, that can be $1,500. So he's got some beautiful clothing. You'd have to agree, Pat. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's interesting tonight. We're going to watch a clip in a little while with Nicola Willis, and she does look like an extra from My Cousin Vinny as well. I don't know why we're throwing shade on people's clothing tonight, but Cyber Goblin just comes out and says that I'm not fair. He saved money by making that jacket from his auntie's curtain. So fair enough. I withdraw and apologise, and we'll keep going with the story.
We've sort of put our best foot forward. It's clearly not enough.
They say the offers amount to increases of between...
It's actually interesting. I mean, the dude in charge is going, it's clearly not enough, i.e. he's saying we haven't offered enough. That's actually a really interesting little... I wonder if Mr. Luxon would be happy to hear him say we haven't offered enough, and because one would imply from that we need to offer more. I'm just saying it's an interesting little perspective. We'll keep going on the story.
Between $8,000 and $29,000 on a senior doctor's base salary.
Most of us don't have to train for 15 to 20 years in order to do the job that we're currently in. We don't make life and death decisions, most of us, on a daily basis.
Health New Zealand put a credible offer on the table. Unfortunately, the union decided not to put that to its members. They should have. Instead, they decided to continue with the strike, which is causing disruption of care to patients.
The unions say they are also in an international marketplace, and senior doctors earn much more in Australia than they do here. This strike is as much about pay as it is about the shortfall of senior medical officers. The doctors here say that's around 25% around the country, but is as bad as 45% in places like Gisborne. Health New Zealand says that figure is closer to 10% across the country.
This means that the remaining senior doctors are having to be the glue holding together a broken health system. They're having to desperately try to provide increasing levels of patient demand and need.
Recruiting doctors is tough, and it's a competitive market. But I think people come to work for more than just money. I think people come to work for the value of the service they do, the people they work for.
Health New Zealand estimates 4,300 planned procedures will have to be postponed due to the strike.
There are too many New Zealanders already waiting too long, and what happened today is not going to assist with the challenges of getting on top of those wait lists.
I want to apologise to patients who are inconvenienced, but I think we need to keep that...
Doctors inconvenience patients by 24 hours. Doctors apologise. Government inconveniences patients by weeks, months, years, and they're like, it's the doctor's fault. Just check that out, people. Just see where those have come from.
Number in proportion to the many, many thousands. I think we're somewhere in the 80,000 people awaiting surgical procedures who are just waiting one day more.
In the latest development, there'll be what's called a facilitation case conference tomorrow. The Employment Relations Authority will talk to both sides about the next steps to take.
There you go. All right. The first thing is, Gary, I mean, obviously it's not going to be quite just a 24-hour delay for some patients because they couldn't get it today, so they'll book in the next opening, which might be in a week or 3 days or whatever. But I think the point that's come out in the last couple of days from the people speaking on and behalf of the doctors is, yeah, we are unfortunately having to make an imposition on some of these patients for a short delay. What the government's doing at the moment in these hospitals is inconvenience these patients with huge delays. I mean, you were talking about years with gynecological services in Northland. And I think us rodeo clowns, us morons in the public are starting to understand that, which I think probably gives more support to what the doctors are doing. Your experiences from today?
Oh, today was an incredible day. We had a good turnout, given that the forecast was for absolutely torrential rain. We knew that we wouldn't be getting the numbers that ideally we would have wanted, and then we were quite happy to see decent numbers. There's about 60 docs and supporters in front of the hospital, and then a peak of about 140 people at the PSA. This was the beginning. This is actually 20 minutes before the start of the rally. If you keep going through my photos, you'll see like it builds. This is just us setting up the tent and the first few signs. But yeah, 140 people at the PSA rally in Tauriwa Park. And yeah, a good turnout all around. Midwives, doctors, nurses, healthcare assistants, people that work as radiation techs. I mean, there's all kinds.
I suspect as well, because we saw it in Dunedin, that you wouldn't have had any you can never say 100%, but there would have been nothing but support from the public driving past and in the area.
Yeah, the number or percentage of cars that were beeping their horns was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to argue with we need to hire more nurses. We need to make a better health system that doesn't keep 200,000 people waiting for a first specialist appointment. I mean, like, think about these numbers. So Simeon is happy to blame us for, for harming patients whose day was postponed today, and it is horrible. If I was waiting a year for a surgery, I'd feel horrendous if it went even one more day. But you have to understand that the kinds of problems that they've wrought on the service means that, as I said, 200,000 people are waiting to see a specialist for the first time. These are people who, are a bit desperate to get an answer to whatever the problem is: cancer, kidney failure, liver failure, whatever. And they're just going to be waiting an interminably long time. And there's no plan for really fixing this. I want you guys to understand that it's a readily solvable problem. Like, I think yesterday you asked, is there a low-hanging fruit? If I could, do magic and, make one thing be better. To some extent, you don't even have to necessarily hire doctors and correct 100% of the problem, but you sure as hell have to hire nurses, because without nurses there to do the actual patient care, it makes the doctor's job infinitely harder. Yeah. And you make the nurse's job easier by hiring healthcare assistants, so that your registered nurses aren't spending, they're university educated professionals who have to spend a lot of their time making beds and cleaning up things and pushing patients around and checking if this or that is done. Because our HCA staffing, a healthcare assistant used to be called an orderly back in the old days. We have nowhere near enough of these people, and it doesn't break the bank to hire them. And yet you can probably double your nurses' effectiveness if they're if the repetitive duties are taken away from them and they can just focus on the actual nursing.
Yeah. So you give.
So I mean. No,
I'm sure the nurses would do anything, go above and beyond all the time. But if we're paying them to be nurses, we want to pay them to be nurses, and we can get other people to do those other jobs, which will help them be nurses better and be more effective.
It's part of Christopher Luxon's pretend business world, mumbo jumbo of saying back office workers, right? The back office worker, there's no back office. There's just a hospital and the people that keep that hospital going. Now, I might use my hands to examine your abdomen, but that doesn't mean that the people that are supporting that work are not completely as essential. So the person getting medical records, the person looking after your data safety, who's been fired now. They just announced, I think 2 days ago, 1,500 firings or disestablishments of roles just in IT services. And I don't know in what universe that is a back office if we have computer systems that are archaic. Like, I was reading some of the comments online of people who've worked in the health system, and they were basically from IT saying, if you want to step back in time and be immensely frustrated, go to work as an IT professional in health. You will be working in some cases on programs that are still running Windows 98. And they said, you don't understand the level of antiquation that we're dealing with. So yeah, it's a lot of things. And on the back of that, to then say we're cutting data and IT staff by 50%, or we're eliminating the IT revitalization for the nation. They had plans and had started on the work of unifying all 20 DHBs into one IT system. That's gone. That's a memory now. So yeah, I'm super sorry that we struck today, and the strike is going to go on for a couple more hours. It's horrible for patients. It sucks, but the alternative is having departments that are understaffed by 10 to 40%, and that's not really good for patients either.
Yeah. We were looking at some of your photos, and I took them down while we were talking because I couldn't go past this one. I mean, it's got to have some, we have to give some credit to this sign, Chewie, surely. I mean, one of the best signs of the day, save health, dump brown. Yeah, we get it. We're picking up what you're putting down. I like that one. Chewie, sir, jump in. Any words?
Yeah, look, I think, again, Simeon is just hammering the point that, hey, look, we made an offer. I'm not going to mention it, but we made an offer. And this nonsense that the union then has to present it to its membership. There would have already been a discussion over what the membership was happy with.
Yeah.
So he's inventing a process that doesn't exist.
So Simeon was Simeon was just awesome. Like I just admire his gumption and his ability to really say anything without shame. I mean, it takes a special kind of person to do that. So he one of the things he said was he wished that the offer had been put to members. I mean, what did I need to know about the offer? I needed to know that for the average senior medical officer, Simeon's offer would be a rise of 0.77%, so less than 1%. And I think if you're dealing with something that's actually negative, way below the level of even inflation, which is 2.5% now, you don't need to take another vote to realize that the people have spoken. We spoke the first time around, right? We voted 86% of the people, of the doctors, the public hospital doctors, the public medical specialists, 86% voted in favor of the strike. And Simeon said, oh, it's more like 50%, because obviously everyone doesn't vote on something. So I looked something up. I went back to 2023 and I looked up Simeon's election results. That man was only voted in by 58% of his voting populace. And he's like, how dare he criticize an 86% vote? Our vote was overwhelming in support of the strike. And and then I had some friends forward me. Oh my gosh, I don't know if you have this, Pat. I emailed you some of it, but it's just surreal. You can go onto the expenses of parliamentarians and find out how much they're using their credit cards for, and what they're being reimbursed for. And then you can go to a different site, and we should maybe put up links to it if you can, of the actual pay that these people are getting. And so Simeon, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can probably find it later. I think it was around $320,000 a year this man is making. And remember that our first year consultant, who has graduated from training at age 32, so 32 years of age, yeah, there's some good stuff. So this is Simeon's money, $320,000 as a salary, superannuation of 20%. Shit. Right? So he's getting $64,000 in the superannuation each year. Pretty incredible. You know, he was saying that doctors are these horrendously overpaid people, but this man's getting an accommodation allowance of $56,000 a year. Like, where is he living?
You're up to about 440,000 there just for those three things.
And then keep going, and you see the expenses claimed. And this is across a year, 4 quarters, I guess, 22,000, 28,000, 27,000, 22,000. So this is an extraordinary amount of money. And if we just went off the base salary, so how much does that add up to? I don't know. So like,
it's about 500 grand because there's about 320. Okay. That's about 100 and what's that? 120. So that's 3. So that's 4. So that's 440. So it's $540,000. 540.
You could hire 2 surgeons, so new surgeons out of training, at the same age as Simeon, right? So he's 34. These surgeons would be 32, probably 33 or 34 if they did subspecializations. So same age as him, and he's making twice as much. Now, I'm not even necessarily begrudging the parliamentarians their money, but the sheer gut-wrenching gall of this small man, and I don't mean that as a pejorative against his height or stature. I mean his soul, his intellect, and his heart are small and shriveled and stunted. The gall of this man to be raking in what 500-ish thousand, and I'm sure there's more benefits there that we don't see, travel or whatever, and yet to understand that he's making twice as much as a new surgeon or anesthetist or intensive care doctor would make is pretty rich. I mean, don't you think? Like, what's your reaction when I tell you we could have 2 surgeons or 1 Simeon Brown?
Yeah, easily 2 surgeons if you include the expenses.
Easily 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, because what is it, about 180 to start with? So that's actually 3. 180 times 3 will be 540. Yeah, that's 3.
Yeah. So yeah, he wants us to just be quiet, and it's like David Seymour said, you know, doctors are muppets that need to be put back in their box. Simeon wants the same. He wants us to shut up, but I don't think he understands what he's gotten into now. He is reviled. His health, his government's health policies, I'll put it even more broadly, are reviled by patients, beneficiaries, pensioners, workers of all kinds, and especially health workers. So, I mean, he's I don't know what he's thinking, but he is really destroying his ability to get the support of the public. I mean, they were out there honking, and it wasn't like it was every car, but it was like every 4th car, every 5th car was honking for us. There's a ton of support. People understand that their doctors are being forced into private and forced abroad. And they can understand that you wouldn't want to work in a department that is missing 30% of the doctors, and you have to pick up the slack for that. There's no way around it. And you can do that for a while. All of us can do that for a while, but you don't want to do it forever. You don't. I'll tell you my experience. I don't want to walk into every single patient's room at the 3 or 4 hour mark or 5 hour, sometimes worse, and say, yeah, I'm Gary Payinda. I'm an emergency doctor. I'm very sorry that it took me 4.5 hours to see you today. That is not something I want to do day after day after day. It's not a good feeling. It's not right. And so today someone asked me, is there a tipping point, Gary? Is there a point at which things break? And what I had to tell them is we understand from the international medical literature that the UK did an amazing study comparing death rates for patients that were waiting 8 hours or longer for admission to the ward. So I've seen you as an emergency doctor. You've got heart failure or a pneumonia or sepsis or whatever. You need to get admitted. You're sick, but there's no bed for you. And so you can't go upstairs. So we put you somewhere, either in that ED cubicle where you block up the cubicle for hours. Other patients can't get cared for there, or we park you somewhere else. Increasingly, sometimes that may even mean a corridor. Your care suffers. You don't get the antibiotics you need. You don't get the heart failure treatment. You don't get the specialists to review you and decide what the next step is. And if you do that to 52 patients, you will increase deaths by 1. So you can just sort of do the maths yourself. There's not a tipping point at which the inadequacies of our health system are just it's going to collapse in on itself. It doesn't work that way. There will be people who suffer demonstrable harm all along the system, and they will just increase in number. And so let's say it's you going to the hospital. Now, maybe the first 52 times you go will be fine, but what matters is the experience of that, that 53rd person who has died an unnecessary death. And that's a correlation. It's not causation, but but we know that this is killing people, and we know that there are people having heart attacks in the waiting room, not getting antibiotics for sepsis until it's profoundly late. And of course that has an outcome on their hospitalization and on their subsequent death rate. So there's not a tipping point at which it all fails, unless you are that one that it is failing on that day. And then your tipping point is 100%, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing that bothers us. And yeah, and that's why we're striking. And this is the thing I would like to let Simeon Brown know with plenty of advance warning. We are taking all of the public service workers with us. It will be the nurses, it will be the healthcare assistants, and everybody else in the society. We're going to rally the police to step up, New Zealand Defence Force, everyone that is getting screwed right now and is set to be screwed even worse in the coming year, because Nicola Willis announced that she's going to hack it to the bone, right? She's going to pull out another 1.1 billion or more with this new budget. And in this all, I just want to be clear that the government had the money, and they chose to spend it elsewhere, right? They took 12 billion in debt to give $18 billion in tax cuts to people who didn't need it. The average pensioner, according to Grey Power, New Zealand, is going to get $2.50 a week of those tax cuts, right? But we know that the 300 biggest landlords in the country are estimated to get $1 million apiece to help them defray the cost of their mortgage interest, right? To allow it to be deductible. That was a decision the government made. And the money is gone. The money is not there for other things because so very much of it went away. 2.9 billion to landlords, 14.7 billion to tax cuts that went largely to the top sectors of society. So it's really rotten. And yeah, to get doctors rallying is a big deal, but we're taking it far further. This is going to trickle and spread and leach throughout the public services, and eventually further than that, because patients are sick of it too.
I know we said beforehand, we were talking before we came on, that you're sort of leaving the negotiations up to the unions and stuff, but I did want to play 60 seconds this morning from Nicola Willis in her My Cousin Vinny costume. Even the gold chain says it all. Because she makes it sound like you guys are being difficult with these negotiations. And I know that's not the case, and I don't want to get your blood pressure up either more than it is, but I just want to play this and then ask you the question about it.
Sure.
Well, look, I think we value our doctors. Obviously, they do an incredibly important job. But of course, we're disappointed that thousands of New Zealand patients are going to have their procedures cancelled as a result of this strike. And we'd really like to see doctors back at the negotiating table, in particular because in this case, they haven't taken the offer that the government's made to their members. The union has just decided to strike. And we think this can be negotiated, it can be resolved, and we worry about all those New Zealanders who are now having scans and procedures delayed because that's their health at stake.
Do we value them enough, though? They said that actually it's not the doctors in Australia that are striking. They're the ones that have chosen to stay. They're the ones that are striking. Do we value them enough?
Well, we do value them. In this pay round, we've offered pay rises of up to 9.5% for those new specialist doctors. And we've also offered payments of up to $25,000 for those doctors choosing to work in really hard to staff parts of the country. So Health New Zealand, I think, have put forward an offer in good faith, recognising the really important role that doctors do in our hospital. They've also been working hard to recruit more doctors. I heard the people on the show talking about those concerns. There's been more than 200 hired so far, around 1,700 additional nurses, and we've actually put in funding to train more doctors as well. So these are issues that we take really seriously, and we're putting our best foot forward in the negotiation.
We've already kind of covered off the idea about the unions not presenting the offer. I didn't say this then, but when you sell your house and you say to your agent, I'm not going to even consider an offer under $520,000.
Exactly.
And they get an offer for $500,000, the real estate agent doesn't present that offer to you. So let's put that to the side. I mean, hearing that interview, you may not obviously have the knowledge of the negotiations going on between the union and them, but she's making it sound like 9.5%. That seems pretty fair in this day and age. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The 9.5% is the highest number, and it only refers to a couple years when the people are first getting out. And the reason they probably targeted that was because we were saying that these brand new specialists on their first step, the first step was so low that they were getting less than the most senior people that they were training. So it was a situation where your trainee was making more than you were, or where you were graduating into being a fully fledged specialist and getting a pay cut, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. So they tried to address that for those specific 3 years, but left everybody else high and dry. And if you look at the numbers, you can debate them, but they're somewhere in the range of, on average, 0.77% up to at most 1.5%. So they're not giving us anything like what we need in order to retain doctors. Right now, and I mentioned this before, any of us can get registered in Australia and go over there, and we with 15 years of seniority, we would be paid less than the new specialist with 1 year, just 1 year out of training. So our highest pay is lower than essentially their worst pay, and that's in the lowest paying state in Australia. So now, again, I'm not going to Australia. I'm not in this for the money. I've been in New Zealand 18 years because I think it's a wonderful place to work, and I love the patients of Northland. I love the work I do. But the issue still is one of, how do you entice people to work in a system that is so very badly understaffed? And would Nicola Willis go to work in a factory that's missing 43% of its employees, and yet she's expected to make widgets just as fast as if they were fully staffed? You would never expect that. It would be really hard to fill that because it's so unfair. That's the situation we're in. The 25,000 bonus is a one-off. They're essentially trying to buy off people in 4 areas, and that's it, just those 4 areas, even though there are many, many hospitals that have great difficulty recruiting doctors, more regions rather, that have great difficulty getting doctors. And so, I mean, they're trying to sort of divide and conquer a bit there. I get it. But, at the end of the day, the numbers speak for themselves. You do not have a health system that people want to work in. You have currently a health system that people want to escape from. And it is the kiss of death when you have now literally medical students planning on avoiding general practice, planning on avoiding these certain other specialties, and wanting to avoid working in New Zealand. That's fatal. And so for her to say, we put money into, or plan to train more doctors, very disingenuous, Ms. Willis. It would be preferable if you didn't just continue losing the ones you have. And the ones that are still here, that are working in the public system, you probably should try to hold on to them because they are keeping the system going. And specifically for Simeon and Ms. Willis, you don't make the public hospital system better by taking 10,579 surgical cases, giving that money to private hospitals out in the private sector. What you will see, what will happen, what is happening is surgeons and anesthetists and theater nurses are going to move out to follow that money out into private, and they're not going to come back. And you know, Simeon knows this. I mean, he doesn't seem it, but he probably is on some level a smart man. And he probably has advisors with some knowledge of health, even though he himself has none except his anti-abortion and anti-family planning leadership roles that he's had in the past. Certainly his job at the bank didn't prepare him for this. But he has to understand that by privatizing and outsourcing all of these 10,579 surgeries, you will inevitably destroy surgery departments, departments of anesthesia, and your pool of theater nurses. Because once people move out into the private sector for easier cases that are cherry picked, right? Only the simplest, most profitable things go out into private. People are not going to want to return to public. And so they are just, I have to believe that this is intentional, and I have to believe that it is an attempt to privatize things. It's along the same lines of private school vouchers, public-private partnerships, private highways and toll roads. Now we're getting into private hospitals, which is what Simeon wants us to do. You know, I just have to look around the country and see that these rebuilds are being, this is the words they used, was staged. So they're being made much smaller and broken down into delayed steps. They're building shells of hospitals rather than full hospitals, and they're staggering them out over time. And they're seeking that public-private partnership, which the international experience almost overwhelmingly shows us is profitable for corporations, but it shifts risk onto governments, and it saddles taxpayers with decades-long liabilities. Essentially, you become a renter in your own land. You have a hospital, but it's not really yours, and your children will be paying for it. So that's pretty much what's happening in health. It's a brief and depressing overview. And to be honest, I think a lot of this is wrapped up in the strike. Why do you think nurses are coming out to support us in great numbers? Thank you, by the way. I had sonographers and midwives ask that I just give them a shout out, because they were some of the earliest and most avid people at the strike and the rally today. Why? Because they understand that we are in this together, that all the essential public services are equally threatened with the path government has chosen, and that's just purely privatization. It's here. It's the answer to all of our woes, even though most of these woes are self-inflicted, because we decided, and I don't mean we, government decided to set aside 19 billion to the people at the top of society rather than the rest of us.
I think I've waited too long for this joke, but I was going to make a joke, which was the $25,000. You know, it is sort of what Simeon Brown costs the country every 2 weeks. So that's not too bad of a trade-off, $25,000. Chewie, sir, you've been sitting there watching and listening. Jump in.
The question I have now is, where do the doctors go to from here? They've, fired a real shot across the government's bow. They've done something we haven't seen before, which is that 24-hour strike. Yeah. What are the next steps?
Well, it could be a game of attrition. Like I'll just give you my personal opinion. With the budget cuts of 1.1 billion that are going to be that have been announced just a couple of days ago, things are going to get tremendously worse in the public sector, and it will feed throughout society. This is an austerity government. It's obvious. And as I said, they've given the money away. We just have to keep pushing them, and the doctors and all of us, that they could fix this problem tomorrow if they just reversed their giveaways. You don't have to keep doing this year after year. You can choose to get some of those billions that you have given away and put them back in the system. It's not too late. So what will happen in terms of doctors? I don't know. We will, I assume, keep striking. I think there will be generally lab workers, HCAs, and nurses that also strike. And then I think it will be increasingly adversarial. And I think eventually government will, I don't know. They don't have any option. They painted themselves into a corner because they won't rescind their very badly targeted tax cuts. They won't admit their error kind of in anything. And so I think you're going to get showdowns across society and destabilization. At the bottom of it all is always the patient, who always gets hurt no matter what happens. You know, when you defund and destabilize things, when you drop the health budget by 3% in real inflation adjusted per capita numbers, we've had a drop of 3%. And then you tell us that there's another 1.1 billion that has to come out of the budget. You know, people are going to suffer. I think the rich will move in, and the desperate will increasingly move towards private health insurance. You're seeing that. I think this will be an unbelievable time for the private hospitals and the private imaging centers and the surgery centers and all the rest. It will be manna from heaven for them. And and you know what? Out of all of this, Simeon, if you look at the numbers, and I do hope you link with the stuff that I gave you, Simeon, if you look at the, 2 years ago, 1 year ago now, and off into the future, it shows you that his salary is growing, the base salary, by roughly $10,000 a year. So life's not too bad for him. And I think until we have political movements and social movements that actually affect people like him, then nothing will change, because he can tolerate, look, he's not the one waiting 2 years for a hip replacement. He's not the one with pelvic pain and bleeding. He's not the one anxious about a colon cancer diagnosis, desperate to see an oncologist. That will never be him. It will never be Luxon. It will never be David Seymour. They'll always have private health insurance and VIP service, even when they're within the public sector. And it won't touch them until we have to make it touch them. And I don't know. I'm going to spend whatever time I have still employed by Health New Zealand doing that on the days that I'm not working.
I just want to touch on one thing before we wrap up. And we've talked about the $1.1 billion less that Nicola Willis talked about this week, just so people are clear of what that is. This is a slide from Craig Rennie's podcast this week. We made this slide in the weekend because he's in Australia this week. And originally, as of the weekend just gone, the operating budget allowance was $2.4 billion. Now, Craig listed off all the things we have to pay for, basically showing that there's not enough in that $2.4 billion to cover all these things. That operating allowance is what's been stripped of another $1.2 billion. So now the operating allowance is $1.3 billion. And as you can see, $1.4 billion goes to health. So of $1.3 billion, there isn't enough to cover health, but if they put it all into health, other commitments, pre-commitments, including Pharmac, is not in there. Education's not in there. Defence, new money is not in there. No money for police to reach targets. No money for regional growth funds. No money for going for growth funds. So when we talk about another $1.1 million that's coming out of the operating allowance, and it means they do not have the money set aside or budgeted for any of these things they say they're going to do, because that comes out of the operating allowance, just so everyone's completely clear on that.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, that looks bleak. It looks horrendous. But I would also point out that we've got essentially monopolies in banking, monopolies in supermarkets, monopolies in the energy sector that's making 92% profits month after month. We've refused to go after tax fraud and corporate fraud. In fact, the government insists on wanting to lower corporate tax rates. We haven't gone after charities, even the ones that are absolute scams, churches that are actually businesses posing as churches. They've done literally nothing to go after the low-hanging fruit and make life easier for people that are trying to pay their rent and trying to afford groceries. So all of the numbers you see are not cast in stone. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. And one hopes that as things get worse, government will realize they have to make some concessions and undo some of the profligate transfer of wealth from the poor and working class to corporations, tobacco companies, you name it. Like I will feel sorry for this government and realize that their heart is in the right place when they tell me that they don't have any more hundreds of millions to give to tobacco companies. Until that point, I have no respect for I have no time to hear them say there's no money. You want money for healthcare or for anything else that's a necessity? Go back and get the 218 million from the tobacco companies, reverse all of that, and then we can talk. Then we'll know you're serious about negotiating with the doctors union or anybody else.
As we wrap up, Chewie, before we go anywhere, anything else you want to add in before we let people know about a little announcement?
No, I think Dr. Gary has once again laid a pretty devastating fire mission on the government and pointed out everything that the general public needs to know. Absolutely phenomenal work.
Gary, you said a bit earlier you were going to take the public service with you. You talked about the police and you talked about teachers. What you're talking about is people on the front line, correct?
That's exactly it. So we're all in this together. Like, make no mistake about it. If the entire public service is being assaulted, it's going to take all of us down with it.
Yep. And it's probably a good time for us to be able to say, for the past, couple of months, Gary and I have been talking about our next podcast to come out of Blindfish Media, and that is The Front Line with Dr. Gary Payinda. We are working on that right now. We are aiming to have it up and running pre-budget, probably fair to say around the week of budget is what it's looking like, maybe the week before. But Gary, welcome to the team. We'll be doing a weekly podcast where you have full control over the content, talking about what's happening on the front line. Do you want to say anything about why you want to do a podcast and what you want to do?
Well, I think being on your show a couple times and getting really good feedback from the audience who wants to know about these things has been transformative for me. Because as you know, like I've had a lot of media come to me for quotes on things, whether it's areas of my medical expertise, whether that's drowning or resuscitation or emergency medicine or whatever, or health politics and policy. But you can talk to them for 40 minutes and end up with a 4-second clip, and that's all that shows up, right? Just the juiciest tidbit, and it's kind of meaningless, and it's not how we should, function. And then I discovered what you guys are doing, where you actually have incredibly intelligent conversations and allow these experts like Craig Rennie to come on and really educate the public. So I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I don't see that there's a corollary to it in kind of mainstream media. You guys are small, but I think, like, I have 75-year-olds and 18-year-olds telling me in the supermarket that they saw me, and I always ask where did you see it, on a TV interview or this or that, and they'll say, BHN, I watch BHN. And it's quite something when you have a show that transcends genders and ages and socioeconomic levels. So you're obviously doing something right. And I think it'll be nice that Craig is doing an economics focused show. That's absolutely essential and something you get almost none of in mainstream media. And it'll be nice to have a show about not just health, because I don't want to pigeonhole it just that much, because there's shared commonalities to all of the essential public services. And I think the issues at the base are the same for all of those. So I think it'll be a good chance to get people, and if you're listening and you're in the audience and you want to be on a show like that, and you want to speak to essential public services and your experience in them, and your ideas on how to improve things, and your ideas on what actual concrete actions and steps we can take now to make things better, like, I want to hear from you. And Pat, you assure me that you'll be able to anonymize people, people's voices and people's identities during interviews, so that we can actually have frank and meaningful conversations on the show with intelligent people who are experts in what they do, right? No one knows the job of a healthcare assistant as well as a healthcare assistant. And they're the one, these are the groups that are essentially voiceless, who could be telling us how to improve things, how to save money, increase efficiency. And that's my aspiration for the show. Who knows what it'll turn out to? Time will tell. We'll have to see. But the level of interest in BHN has been quite surprising and astonishing, just in the community. So it's pretty awesome what you guys are doing. You realize you're building something that could be, I don't know, you guys could be the future Rupert Murdochs and Fox News of New Zealand. But in a good way.
Dozens of us. Dozens.
But in a good way, like kind of the opposite, the mirror image way of that. Yeah, I think you're doing good work, and I appreciate it.
When you started, and thank you for those kind words, the money's in the mail, the check's in the mail. I thought when you started off by saying you can talk to a media company for 40 minutes and they take 40 seconds, I thought you were going to say, and you guys are the opposite.
4 seconds.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say we're the opposite. I've only got 4 seconds worth of some stuff to say, but you guys drag it out over 40 minutes. So either way.
Oh, no. I'm just amazed that your audience actually cares enough to listen to this. I mean, I'm surprised and shocked when I get these emails back, or on my Substack when I get notices back of we watched that, and people are picking up on little things. There's this interesting thing on there about doctors. Simeon will say that we have tons and tons of leave, and then you'll read something about the truth that we have. I think it's over 1 million hours of unused annual leave, because we find it so hard to take our leave and to leave our departments and essentially abandon them and abandon our patients. So it's quite fascinating that people are engaged and listening at that level. And it gives you hope that we can change things, because I think a lot of people realize what's going on and want to see this going in a different direction. And my best advice, in a friendly way, to the current coalition government is listen to the people. Try to help the common people more. Try to help the people at the bottom 50% of the income distribution. The so-called bottom feeders. Focus on those folks, because if you do good things for them, they will be loyal to your party and National Act and New Zealand First forever. So look after them. Don't stop what you're doing. Take a different path. It's not too late. Change things, and you'll be ascendant.
Gary, always a pleasure, and I'm sure you and I will be talking in the next couple of days as we count down to launching your podcast. And obviously, BHN whānau, you're involved. It'll be similar to Craig's in that it'll be on both, Spotify, and it'll be on Apple Podcasts and other places, iHeartRadio, yada, yada, yada. But it'll also be on YouTube. So if you're watching right now, whether it's in live stream or not, and you haven't subscribed to the channel, perfect time to subscribe to the channel. Because this is going to be this platform on YouTube, right? Only on YouTube, not on the BHN Facebook page. We may start up with their own Facebook pages later down the track, but for now, the DOC Studios Facebook channel is where Gary's podcast will be in video format, if you want to check it out. So thanks, Gary. We'll keep talking. Appreciate you coming on. Well done on today. I know it's a bit of a strange thing to think about having to do this as such a bastard of a reason, but you guys stood up, and I think most of New Zealand stood up with you. So thanks for doing what you do, and we've got your back for as long as you need us. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you're most welcome. I appreciate everything you guys are doing to keep the knowledge and the debate out there. It's essential, because if we let them get away with this, it's a one-way path. Like, it's a one-way path to privatization. You're not coming back from that for decades to generations. And so, someone has to resist and say that there's a better, more humane way, a more cost-effective, cost-efficient way as well. So thanks for doing what you do, guys.
All right, dude. We'll talk super soon,
Right. Cheers, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye,
All the
Chewie.
best. Oh, people here that saw Gary speak today. Rata says great speech at Tarewa Park today, Gary. So there you go, there was people there. So there you go, Whānau. I know I've been playing footsie with you guys for a couple of months about, and there's more on the way. There's actually a couple of others I'm talking to as well, we're talking to as well, but the original two that we've been working towards, Gary and Craig. Craig is up and running, and I needed time to get that kind of settled and all done. And as we speak, maybe literally, I don't know, but there's design work and stuff being done for Gary's show, the branding around Gary's show. And then we will get that going, as I said, certainly before or around budget day. I saw someone in the chat saying, you know, get Gary and Craig to talk to each other. Yes, exactly. Yep. So after the budget, Craig does a part of his podcast on what came out in the budget to do with health. Gary can jump on and talk about that. Cross-pollination, that's what we do. All right, Chewie, is there anything else you want to get to about that? We've got some super chats and stuff sticking in there. Do we want to just rip into those, or anything else you want to say?
Let's crack into the super chats.
Okay. Apparently, I don't know what this is talking about. I had a look at the thing and I can't see anything about 2 o'clock, but Kiwi Bird says live at 2 p.m. have a $2 late fee. I have no knowledge of what that actually means. I'm on a wait list. I still support strikers. Yeah, that was an interesting thing of the news today. They were talking to a couple of people whose surgery or whose procedure got put off today. And they were honest, right? They were like, oh, it's a bit annoying, but completely support the doctors. They have to do this. It's the right thing. Yep. So I think that's about the best you can expect, other than it would either be that or it would be I just support them. But, you know, we all get it. If you're waiting for an appointment and you've been waiting for a month and then it's the one day, you'd be like, oh, that's a bummer. But as everyone's been saying, the biggest reason for things being delayed, surgeries being delayed or put off or whatever, is because of the shortage in staff. And these guys were striking in part, talking about pay and conditions, but because of the shortage of staff. So one extra day means hopefully starting to walk towards a solution, Chewie. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Think how many procedures get cancelled because of lack of staffing or overworked surgeons, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that will pale. You know, the procedures cancelled today will pale in comparison to the ones that are cancelled because of lack of staff or burnout.
Yeah. Another super chat here from A. Thank you for the super chat. Simeon probably added to the patient list by increasing road accidents when he raised the speed limits. Yep, I'm guessing so.
Actually, no, there'd be more deaths.
Oh, so there were no surgeries needed.
So there you go.
Okay, no surgeries needed.
Jesus, that's grim.
It's in the ballot, Gary. Can the Minister of Finance and by extension the Minister of Finance be... Oh, Minister of Health. I read it wrong, sorry. Minister of Health and by extension the Minister of Finance be sued for malpractice for the chronic underfunding. We have a very tough way of suing people in New Zealand because we have ACC. We kind of signed our rights away to suing to get ACC. But, you know, point taken. Nikki says she values you, Dr. Gary. Any thoughts? Sorry, we didn't get to that while Gary was here. Ian says, in a way, I'm glad my parents are no longer alive. Father, OBS and GYN, mother, registered nurse, they'd be both furious and heartbroken. And Noah says, if Gary ran for office, I would vote for him in a heartbeat. I was thinking about that the other day. You know, remember back in the day we were talking about, we thought that maybe Chloe shouldn't be the leader of the Greens, or we didn't say shouldn't. We wondered if she's more effective as an MP than being burdened with that. I was wondering about people who are great communicators, and there's no one in particular, but I was wondering about the effectiveness of being in Parliament versus outside Parliament and being able to talk to Parliament. I don't know, I'm interested in that, eh? Interesting. I don't know if there's any research on that, but You know, a lot of people, like if we look to America, I know that people in the squad, AOC and the likes, when they got in, they seemed to be squashed as a part of the Democratic Party away from their progressive ideals. Obviously seems to be getting it back now with the oligarchy tour with Uncle Bernie, but it was like the I don't know, the function of the political party seemed to not provide AOC the same freedom to be as effective as she was when she was just talking freely. So, I mean, it's that's not of anyone in particular, just a thought I had the other day. What else, Chewie? We've got a couple of other quick things to get to. Is there anything else you want to cover off now? Anything you want to respond to from that conversation with Gary?
No, I think we can move on from that. Yeah, it's just we're real clear on what's going on, and I think the government's, mainly Simeon and Nicola, let's be honest, trying to gaslight the public and weaponizing us against the doctors is just such an act of desperation. Like, we've seen through it.
Yeah. Christian says, don't even start the ACC conversation. They've ruined my life. Look, I get it. I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way, because it seems that what's happened is in New Zealand, we've lost the rights to sue broadly because ACC will provide for us, but ACC doesn't provide for us. It's like, okay, well, either give us that right back or sort out your shit, ACC. Like how someone can get a workplace injury based on an officer's negligence, you know, and loses an arm in a combine harvester or something, and they go in ACC for the rest of their lives and basically live the life of a single income, low income person for the rest of their lives. Whereas if it happened in places that do sue, the company would have coverage for being sued. They'd sue them for $5 million and they still wouldn't have their arm, but at least they'd be comfortable and be able to afford to live. You know, it wouldn't be sustaining on the absolute minimum of life. So I like the ideas of ACC. I don't like the practice of ACC because it doesn't give to us what they've taken away with the right to sue. It should also give to us the same, but it doesn't do that. So not a fan. I mean, am a fan, not a fan. You know, some things. It's like our health system, right? I mean, I didn't ask Gary this, but, you know, would you rather have our health system or the American health system? I think many people would say our system over the American system, because over there you do just need money to get it done. But then we've got to improve ours as well. So better but not good enough, more accessible but not accessible enough, good but needs to be better, average, bad but needs to be good. Are we bad and are they like, you know, they're bubbling lava in the pits of hell? Is that the American system and we're just bad? You know, I don't know. It's well beyond my pay grade anyway. Conversations. Life of nuance, Chewie. All right. Hey, here's a quick conversation. It was that extra that we talked about before from my cousin Vinny. She was on breakfast this morning. It's both the gold chain. Look, it's actually no shade because we just did this about the guy in the other story. So this is no shade at a female, but it's both the chain and the slick back hair. That's the my cousin Vinny sort of. It's a. I'm not saying it's a bad look either. I'm just making an observation.
Hey, look, there's not enough money for stuff. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Just forget about it.
Fugazi. Okay. So they talked a bit about the voting. Prisoners losing their votes, losing the right to vote. We talked about this last night. I thought we should get a little bit from the government themselves and see when they get asked about it, what they were actually thinking about prisoners losing the rights to vote.
I want to move on to prisoner voting rights. Big decision from Cabinet around those. What are your thoughts on that and whether actually that's fair as well?
Is this really the biggest issue we have for law and order right now? I do question that. We've recently seen a 96% increase in methamphetamine use in New Zealand. The government's own ministerial advisory group on organised crime has said that organised crime is out of control in New Zealand and that the government has lost their control on it. Those are the big issues that this government needs to be focusing on, not just voting rights for 2,000 prisoners for a 3-year period.
Ms. Willis, what?
I both sort of agree and disagree with that. I think you can do, like, forget the law, like we're talking about, but you can focus on minor things and significant things at the same time. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I guess what Ginny's saying, though, is you aren't actually focusing on the other one. You know, you're focusing on, your government's focusing on passing legislation about men and women, and, you know, it's like you're not focusing on the more serious one. I think that's completely valid. A government can focus on both layers. This government only seems to be focusing on the less significant issues, Chewie, is what I'm saying.
Less significant, but my God, does it play well with their base?
Yeah.
You know, and that's they're not trying to solve a problem with crime. Like removing voting rights from, as Jenny said there, 2,000 people is not going to affect the crime landscape here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
At all. Not a fucking skerrick. But they made a big song and dance of it because it plays into the myth that national and the right-wing parties are tough on crime. Not effective, but tough.
Yeah.
Tough. We're mean. We're mean to the criminals. Doesn't change anything, but we're mean.
The comments that the Prime Minister made yesterday when he was asked about the human rights situation when it comes to taking their votes away, and remember the 3 words he said? I don't care.
Don't care. Don't care.
You know, it's like, I don't care. Oh, yeah, I just...
How do we tie that into what he said on election night, that he was going to be the Prime Minister for all New Zealanders?
Yeah. And
even the ones in prison?
And how does that tie into Mr. Seymour's conversation about we should all be treated equally under the law? So this is us treating prisoners differently under the law. So did I just miss that? We should all be treated equally and the same under the law, except prisoners. Is that what? Was it always clipped at the end of that, and they just left off those last 2 words because this is not following through on what certainly the ACT policy was, and as you say, Chewie, the national sort of stance of being Prime Ministers for all New Zealand. But remember, this is also the Prime Minister who refused to speak to Harry Tam, even though Harry Tam, with respect, has a huge background and knowledge on how to deal with gangs and could be incredibly helpful for any government in finding solutions. But nope. If you talk to these people who have been around gangs, that doesn't come across as stuff on crime. So that's exactly what you're saying. That's actually, again, it might play well to a base, but it doesn't mean it plays well when it comes to good policy. Anyhow, let's keep going.
Ms. Willis, what about the legal footing that the government is on? Is it legally sound to be making this move?
Yes, it absolutely is, because this is fundamentally about our rights and our responsibilities in a fair society. And those who break the law, who victimise other New Zealanders, who perpetrate violent crimes, that they actually, under the law, have some of those rights taken away because they haven't exercised their responsibilities to other New Zealanders. So we think this is fair. And of course, when they leave prison and when their law...
Well, hang on. They have some rights taken away, like the freedom of association and that kind of stuff. But this is a new one. Are you suggesting just because they've had some rights taken away, that means you can take all of their rights away? You know, because there is a system, you're correct, they do have some rights taken away, right to associate, freedom of movement, these sorts of things they can no longer do when they're in a prison cell. But that doesn't mean they have no rights. Is that where National wants to... Are we actually figuring this out? They want to go to a situation where they want prisoners to have no rights, because we're seeing in America what a president and party will do to both citizens, green card holders, migrants looking for refugees, when they follow a system of no rights. They get shipped off to it's basically a concentration camp in a South American country. Not suggesting that's exactly going to have here, but that's the end when quote unquote prisoners or people have no rights. Is that what we're saying? Because we're restricting some rights, you don't get any rights?
I also love the fact that she's like, oh yeah, no, we're pretty sure this is legal. I mean, the courts disagree. The courts have already stated that it's a breach of human rights. So I hope that the host pushes back on this.
Well, shall we see?
I'm not hopeful, but let's see.
Shall we see?
And of course, when they leave prison and when they're law-abiding, they'll get that right to vote back again. But
okay, sorry, I'm sorry to get into that. So if you're not law-abiding, you shouldn't be voting. Isn't this like a religious lesson? He that is without sin cast the first stone. So is it more that they're not law-abiding and they've been caught? Because you didn't say that. You just said not law-abiding. Can we get pedantic here and go, therefore, the people in society who aren't law-abiding, they shouldn't vote either? Because that's what she's just said. She said when they're law-abiding, they get that right back. So what happens if you're like a white-collar criminal who's ripped off IRD and you now have to pay back a whole bunch more? You've broken the law. Do we take the right off them as well? And then when they're law-abiding again, when they've paid off their back pay to IRD, they get their right to vote again? Or does that not play quite so well with your audience? Certainly because you're talking to your audience primarily about brown people. Maybe that's why it plays much better to your audience. Maybe.
of course, when they leave prison and when they're law-abiding, they'll get that right to vote back again. But fundamentally, we're sending a message that this is not a government that tolerates criminal offending. We're on the side of victims and we make no apologies for that.
This government has no plan to break the cycle of crime in New Zealand. They're about headlines and quick bumper sticker slogans trying to detract from what the real problem is that we have a growing methamphetamine and organised crime problem in New Zealand. And even the Minister of Police has delegated that responsibility to his Associate Minister. They need to start facing up and dealing with the problems that we have right now.
We've had Marie Dyberg on earlier, criminal defence lawyer, who was saying that...
Ginny's done good in this interview, mate. You know, props. We've had some criticisms of Ginny in the past. This is on point, this messaging.
Criminal defence lawyer who was saying that these are rights that prisoners should have too. But a lot of people writing in to our inbox today saying, well, if you're going to abuse those rights when you're out in society, why should you have those rights?
Yeah, a lot of people writing in. You get that, Chewie? Who watches TV in the morning these days? Who do you think? What do you think the demographic of those people? Interesting, he said writing in. He didn't say emailing. They probably were getting delivered by telegram and courier pigeon, I suspect. I'm thinking, just because I'm a judgy kind of a prick, very old, very white people. Because who else is watching breakfast radio?
To the TV Guide.
Yeah,
those people have
those people. Those people.
Yeah.
Why should you have those rights when you're in prison?
If we're serious about breaking the cycle of crime in New Zealand and those prisoners who have just had a shorter sentence, if we're serious about reintegrating them and giving them a society which they can function in, voting's part of that.
Yep.
And so we believe that taking those rights away is simply a short statement from this government to try and demonstrate they're being tough when they're not actually dealing with the real issues that are driving crime in New Zealand.
Great messaging. Well done, Jenny. Props for that. And that's what we said last night. You know, these people are already isolated and rejected by society en masse. And what you're doing now is just giving them another reason to be rejected by society en masse. I don't think it's smart. And I don't think it's going to give you, government, the outcome, meaning the downstream effect that you think it will do. You know, what you're doing is not stirrick and cat. That was supposed to be carrot and stick. It's just stick. And there's no carrot at all there, you know? But they've done things wrong. They're in prison. They're getting punished. Oh, that's their punishment. Their punishment is being in prison. Their punishment is also not also being in prison and having all your rights taken off you. It's like the punishment is being in prison. That's it. Yeah. Now you're almost doubly punishing them. And like we said last night, if you missed the show, Māori are disproportionately imprisoned compared to Europeans. And I don't just mean there's more Māori in prison. Research shows clearly, right? We showed it last night, that when committing the same crime, when having the same conviction, twice as many Māori get jail time than non-Māori, than Europeans. So that means following this whole voting thing, you are disproportionately impacting on the Māori community because more of them get put in prison for the same things that Europeans do in this racist justice system that we have. So, you know, should we keep going? Should we debate that one? I think that's a pretty good debate, Chewie, about white privileges. If ever I've heard it. People want to argue there's no such thing. Go on, challenge that one, psychopaths.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't remember what we're doing next. Well, let me do this though, because I noticed you had some of these as well. This is I should have brought this up when Gary was here. That was us today. That was at Otago University.
Mm-hmm. Mayday! 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 Mayday!
Got someone over there saying they're a firefighter, and hearing people scream Mayday is a scary situation, which I kind of guess that's the point of calling it Mayday. Let's wrap up. Remember at the start of the show I said, do you know when someone always stands by what they believe in? And even if you disagree with it, you kind of go, at least they're consistent.
Oh, I don't like where you're going with this.
I actually don't think he always stands by what he believes in. I mean, the perfect example is this thing about prisoners not getting the vote. You know, it's a perfect example. He's not standing by what he believes in, what he says he believes in. He's a hypocrite. So I don't actually think that. But when David Seymour comes out and says he wants to slash bloated ministerial lineups, then, you know, we should have a talk about it. Act leader.
Start with his own fucking department, the Department of Regulation or whatever that he set up.
Yeah, well,
but there's an enormous amount of money that's gone into that.
ACT leader and soon-to-be Deputy Prime Minister David Seymour has criticised the ministerial lineup as looking bloated and full of meaningless titles, as he calls for a smaller team of ministers, portfolios and departments. In a speech to the Tauranga Business Chamber on Thursday, which I'm assuming is today, not last Thursday, Seymour made the case for streamlining the executive government, saying the current setup was a big, complicated bureaucratic beast, and an example of, quote, national paralysis. We currently have 82 ministerial portfolios held by 28 ministers, and under them we have 41 separate government departments, Seymour said. Something has to change. You know what this is as well, though? This is almost like him being in opposition. Because he can, even though he's in government, he can say all these things now and never have to do anything about it. Because basically National's going to go, well, no, and then that's it, done with. So this is David Seymour sort of acting like an opposition MP with all the freedom in the world to say whatever he wants, to put his bona fides on the thing, saying, no, I'd cut everything. I'll cut this, I'll cut that, I'd cut everything, knowing he's never, ever, ever, ever going to get the ability to cut these things. Something has to change. Sure, that might put me and a few of my colleagues out of a job, but if that's the price, then it's worth it, as I just said. This will never, ever go anywhere. So he can say what he wants. It'd be like Chris Hipkins going, I think the Prime Minister should get paid $0. And when he was Prime Minister, next time around, he'd be like, well, I can't, it's remunerations take care of it. I can't really do much about it.
I think that's really telling, eh? That you say that it's like he's in opposition. Because he is.
Yeah.
He's in opposition to National. Where does ACT get their votes from?
Yeah.
He's not taking them from Labour. He's not taking them from Greens or Te Pāti Māori. He's taking the votes from National. So this is what it's like when you've got a minor party on a loose leash. Is that they're just going, wow, I'm just going to make things difficult for you, man. I'm going to take votes away from you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and New Zealand first, I guess. But so this is straight from the speech. Let's leave the story and come straight to the speech. Ireland, this is his speech about his case for a smaller government. Ireland, with roughly 5 million people, has constitutional maximum of 15 ministers managing 18 portfolios, and yet somehow the Irish have managed to keep the lights on, run hospitals, fund schools, maintain roads, and defend their borders without 82 portfolios, 28 ministers, 41 government departments. In fact, they've done a much better job than us for most of the century. That's not in spite of having simpler government. I suspect it's because they have. I think it's because they have it, sorry. If we look further aboard, the comparison is even more stark. South Korea, with a population of 52 million, has 18 ministers. The United Kingdom, with 67 million, has around 22. The United States, with over 330 million, runs a cabinet of about 25 by comparison. New Zealand's executive looks bloated. Now, of course, and I don't know how all of these countries' governments work, but I know that the United Kingdom, for example, has another layer of government in the House of Lords.
Yeah.
I know that the United States
has South Korea.
Well, let's talk about the United States first. Has Congress and the Senate and the cabinet. So this is one of these examples, right? When we talked last week about crime in Singapore and something else last night, I can't remember what it was, that unless you bring the whole system into this country, which would mean 3 separate areas of power and government like America has, you have to have 3 areas, 3 levels, 3 layers of government to give you 25 cabinet members. So you can't just say, well, they only do it with 25. Yeah, they do it with 25. And then you add about another 600 or 700 over the other 2 layers that then pick up all the slack that, for example, all of our ministers and their departments are doing. So it's very, very, very dishonest what he's doing here.
It's super dishonest. It requires ignorance to believe in that. Like, just complete, I don't want to know about other countries' level of ignorance. South Korea basically had a coup within the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
They're paralyzed by people's protests most summers. Their political process is dominated by 5 enormously large, enormously powerful industrial conglomerates. Like, they're essentially a half step away from just being a military government most of their existence. So it's just remarkable how dumb that comparison is.
Yeah. He finishes
Ireland's part of the EU.
Yeah. He finishes
the
speech by saying, I think we could easily cut the number of portfolios in half. Now, I think portfolios are like education, health. You know, what are we cutting in half? What are we getting rid of, Mr. Seymour? So if you just pulled a random number of half, what are the portfolios that you're getting rid of? What are the departments serving and looking after some of the needs of New Zealanders that we're getting rid of? I'd like to know that before I anger. What's your metric for getting rid of half of them? I'd like to know that. While reducing the number of ministers by 8, random numbers pulled out of the air, pulled out of his ass, bringing cabinet back to a scale that is manageable, focused and accountable. New Zealanders deserve better than a bloated bureaucracy with meaningless titles. They deserve a government that respects them enough to be efficient. New Zealanders don't need 82 portfolios to live better lives. They need a government that does its job and then gets out of their way. I'm looking forward to the second half and floating more ideas like this as we plan for a better tomorrow. As I said, with absolutely zero possibility of ever going anywhere near a vote, he can say whatever he wants, as Chewie said, as the opposition to Christopher Luxon and as act as the opposition to National. Chewie.
Yeah, I'd like him to see to go the next step, right? He reckons we can lose half of them. What are they?
Yeah, exactly.
What ones does he think aren't important enough to have a minister?
I've got a couple of ideas. I reckon ones that are involved with people with melanin in their skin. I reckon ones that are involved with people with without a Y chromosome. I reckon there's a couple of starters. You know, and if he's going to be Trumpian, education might be in there as well.
Oh yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, just want to just say it out loud, mate.
Yeah. I'm just looking up New Zealand portfolios. I was thinking we can get a list here. There's a ministerial list. Ministerial list as of 24th of Feb 2025. Well, the minister responsible for ministerial services. Yeah, okay. Finance, sport and recreation, minister for Auckland. Royal Commission into Historical. Oh, get rid of that one. Lead Minister for the government's response to the Royal Commission's report into historical. I'm sure he doesn't care about that one. Child poverty reduction. How about that one? I'm sure that one could go. Yep. Foreign affairs.
Like the children are poor because their parents are bad.
Defence, immigration, social development and employment, agriculture. That's gone. ACC. Oh. Minister for the South Island, that is gone. Transport. Yeah, so there you go. Agriculture, the environment, that's gone.
Everything you can privatize.
Energy, that's gone. Police, yeah, I might stay there because he's friends with other people. goes on and on and on. Okay, so you kind of go like, well, I think we could probably get rid of half. Which half? I don't know. I haven't thought about that. Bet you probably has thought about it. I bet you probably knows which half you get rid of. Anywho, that's us for the week, Chewie. Is there anything else we want to? Is there a couple of starred messages and we need to get out? What's the hat?
Let's here we go. Fun fact: Seymour is really, 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 really dumb.
I didn't even knew that was a fact. I'll take that on board as accurate.
Like, fuck, he loves the sound of his own voice. He thinks he's a very clever boy. But my God, the moment you scratch whatever he's talking about, it just falls apart like a Thanos snap. Dust in the wind. Random question, Pat. I'm working on some art for the BHN crew. Does your beard reach all the way to your hairline, or does it stop at your ear?
Well,
this is important.
I had a haircut yesterday, so at the moment there's a bit of a gap there. It's like goes to zero there, and then it starts again. But when I let it grow, it does go. That makes sense. I'll take my glasses off. You see, it goes all the way up. It does go up the way. Yeah. There you go. So I'll be, oh, look, so what happens with my camera? Doesn't recognize me when I take my hat off. And it turns itself off. Sheesh.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm starting to lose it for the first time, actually, up here. I always used to say my dad had a good head of hair till the day he died, and I was always like, oh, at least I'll never lose all my hair. It'll be fine. I wear a hat, so it doesn't matter, and it's going. And here it's going a bit. And yeah, noticed it the other day. Not that I care. When I played basketball, I shaved my head for like 10 years. I went down to skin as well with razor blades and stuff. So head, I don't care about hair.
Nice. Angie says we need the Ministry of Magic.
That's a good one. I like that one. I think we do too.
Like, because David Seymour has put forward the idea that we need less portfolios, I obviously have to take my natural position, which is immediately opposite whatever David Seymour is saying. So I think we need more portfolios. I think we need a minister responsible for pie standards. We just need a consistently high level of pies.
Well, I'm concerned, but I'm concerned about that because if the consistent level wasn't good enough, my 15-year-old loves pies, and to be fair, we normally get the kind of the cheap Pam's ones or that sort of thing. The other day, unfortunately, we were at Woolworths, and the only pies they had were Big Ben steak and cheese, and she's like, "You need to buy those again. They're so much better." And I was like, "Oh, damn it,
Big Ben's."
Yeah,
Big Ben's.
Yeah. As opposed to like Pam's.
See, when I become minister for pie standards,
Ponsonby
Big
pies?
Ben's they're on the chopping block, mate.
Best pies I've ever had. We used to live in Tauranga. I think it's Makatu, little bay around from Tauranga. It's kind of south and out to the coast. And there's Makatu pies, and they were like, "Whoa, yeah, they're the best." I grew up with Ponsonby pies out of Auckland. They were pretty damn good as well. Oh.
Timaru boy, I do still have this. That's one of the few soft spots I have for Timaru. But the maize pie, it's a different style of pie. Got fond memories.
I haven't had it for a long time, but there's a pie they sell at New World. It's like a family size pie, and they do like a pork and apple. And it's like $20. It's like $20, so it's quite an expensive pie, but it is the shit. It is pretty amazing. I wonder if I can find out what it is, because now that we're in consumer advice section of the show, we should make sure we tell people.
God, we've what a hard pivot this is. We've created a new ministry
of pies.
Look, the Ministry of Pies. You would be the pie minister.
I didn't even think about that. The pie minister.
That's a great joke. I'm very pleased.
Oh, there they are.
But it would literally be a bloated ministry.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
PJs. Yeah, I see they were 20. They're 26. But if you're having like let's be honest, Chewie, you just have a small piece. Like maybe half. But that in 6, well, that in 8, per person, that's not too bad. Jimmy's pies are the devil. Jimmy's are the devil. Don't even. Jimmy's pies are the devil.
Do you know what I like about Jimmy's pies?
What?
They don't have big chunks. It's almost like that pie has been pre-chewed. It is the perfect drunk pie. I will not be taking questions at this time.
I tell you what, this is the pie of. I got to talk for another hour now. Funnily, we've got to the good side. The guys from Majority Report, they talk about the fun half of the show, and the fun half of the show happens behind the members' paywall. So that's what we're doing now. I talked to these guys last year about testing the advertising, like to do a little kind of giveaway with them. I've never had them, but I don't really eat pies now. I kind of can't, but they watch as well, because I
eat anything else.
I contacted them and I said, this is what I said. Okay, behind the curtain time. They've all left, haven't they? There's just you and me, Chewie? It's just you and me. I'm like, we want to test what our reach is for possible sponsors or advertisers. Do you want to come on board for a few months? We probably charge you nothing and just give it a go, and we'll do something, and we'll see what kind of uptake you guys get. And they said, yeah, we're happy to do that. And then it just got busy. It just got real busy. But they said they watch and they know. So fat bastards, if you guys are watching and you want to test our marketplace again, that sounds a bit crass, doesn't it? Hey, come test our marketplace.
My wife goes down to Invercargill once, maybe twice a month, and she borrows my AV to do it. And this
what?
Is part of
sacrilege?
This is part of my payment for
Right.
using my car. Is that she comes back with fat bastard pies for me? It's a good deal.
Everyone should flood Fat Bastard with email inquiries now. Say, they were talking about you on BHN. And then they'll realise how...
Let me tell you about their subscription service.
Roasted kumara and tender lamb.
You can sign up. They will send you a number of pies per month that you pay via subscription. For living in the future, people.
I tell you, there's something I learned about Dunedin when I moved here, because I was a big pie eater in Auckland. And in Dunedin, you struggle to find a steak and cheese pie. Here's a couple of things that I learned about Dunedin when I moved here.
It's the most offensive thing I've ever heard.
They're not as readily available in Dunedin. The other thing that's different about Dunedin from when I moved down from Auckland is in Auckland, in every suburb, there's a bakery that's owned by the person behind the counter doing it, making the things on site. Every suburb. Don't have that in Dunedin. They have that horrible Coupland's place. Oh no, they might want to sponsor us. That fantastic Coupland's place that eats up cinnamon. But that was two of the differences. And the third difference, if you ever moved to Dunedin, you never really drive long enough to charge your phone in the car. That's fair, actually. Because everything's 9 minutes away.
It's very true.
Whereas in Auckland, you leave central Auckland and you drive 45 minutes home and your phone's at 70% by the time you get there.
I had to drive to Queenstown to experience the traffic jam.
When I came down to Dunedin, before we moved here, I came down and did like a recce of some houses. It was 5 p.m. because the radio was on and the news was playing. I pulled up to the city end of the southern motorway, right? So you know where I am? I'm looking at those billboards, warehouses on the right, cities on the left, and the cars coming out of the city. There was a queue of 4 cars at the lights to get onto the motorway at 5 p.m. on a weekday. And I went, where? I expected a tumbleweed to go down and a horse and cart. These pies have been up there for a very long time. Well, listen, if you're watching Fat Bastards, we've got a PO box now, so we can receive some of your wares. Chicken and cranberry, look at that. That looks pretty good as well.
And there's your steak and cheese.
Oh,
so I'm sorry.
I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that not as readily available in Dunedin. They seem to be the pie of choice in Auckland. In Dunedin, it seems to be the mince or mince and cheese seems to be the pie of choice, primary pie of choice. Just saying.
There we go. Big calls on tonight's show.
Yeah, there we absolutely solved the world of their pie problems. And you know what's happened? I've taken my hat off and my brain started to leak out the flap at the back, and that's why we're talking about this. All right, guys. I'm assuming the kids are here tomorrow. I haven't heard otherwise. Actually, did I get a message from Magenta today? I should probably read it in case they're not going to be here tomorrow. Hang on. We'll do it live, as they say. We'll do it live. There you go, Magenta. It was yesterday. Sorry, Magenta. Oh, no, it wasn't about that. So there you go. I guess the kids are here tomorrow. I don't know. If we're mum and dad, who's who, Chewie? I think you're mum, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just let mum and dad know if you're not going to be here, kids. So we'll turn the lights off at the front door so we're not wait up for you. I don't know why I've gone all silly. I apologise about that at the end, but get me talking about my passion of pies. Who knows where it can go. We'll be back Monday night from 9 p.m. for the Pat and Chewie next edition of BHN Kids In tomorrow night, taking you through some crazy, crazy stuff.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all
Perfect.
Everybody
Thank
loves
you.
Mum.
Thank you, Fair. Thank. But you can be two dads. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Chewie is prettier. I acknowledge that. That's fair as well.
While the many have to work at what they can afford, and the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A in a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and will be analyzed by what Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's big hairy news.
Profound, Chewie. We've been told profound for tonight. Thanks, team. Thanks for the week. It's been a really good week. Really, really enjoyable shows, and thank you for being a part of it. We'll be back Monday night for the next edition of Big Hairy News with us two. As I said, the kids in tomorrow night. Chewie, anything to wrap up with?
Pies are good. Keep up the pie consumption. The economy relies on it.
The pie economy. All right, team. We'll catch you Monday. Be safe. Be well. Hooroo.
Cheers, man.
Oh, actually, there's one other thing. Sorry, I'll just come back in. We're going to do a meetup on Saturday morning. I've done not anything about it yet. I'm terrible. I will put out the invitation as soon as the show is finished. So if you're a patron and you want to do a meetup, within the next hour, it'll be in your inbox. Saturday morning, come meet up, come hang out if you want. We'll have a chat. So I might see you then. If not, we'll see you at 9 o'clock Monday night for another edition of Big Hairy News.